it out, and then it became part of the script, and then you would have to repeat it. But Lee was constantly improvising, so he was constantly digging himself a grave, because he would come up with so much stuff, and he wasn't like a incredibly trained actor, though he was a very good actor when the camera was rolling, but he didn't have a lot of training. You know, he was more of a military guy. But he would accumulate so much dialogue for himself, and it would just make it harder and harder for him all day long.
Because memorizing lines is not easy for a lot of people who are even professionals who do it their whole lives and are trained.
Yeah.
So I'm going to get one more question, and I'm going to unleash heck, because it's Utah.
Okay.
So I have said this to a lot of people in public, and I will say this to my dying day. One of the greatest physical acting moments I've ever witnessed is you as Edgar in Men in Black.
Thanks. Thanks very much.
It's the balance of, it is super funny, but it's also unbelievably believable, if I can say that, because I've actually felt like you were a bug trying on a human suit.
Yeah.
My only worry was, did you hurt yourself doing that? Because that looked like you might have double jointed yourself in the inappropriate way.
No, I didn't hurt myself, but I can tell you a really good story about that if you want to hear it.
That's exactly why I asked.
So, a friend of mine who used to run Danny DeVito's company a long time ago, her name was Stacy Scher. She was a producer, and I happened to Keanu Reeves and I did a movie called Feeling Minnesota, where we played brothers. And Stacy produced that. And so we became friends, and I was in LA doing another film at the time. I'm a New Yorker, I live in New York. But back in the day, they used to actually make films in Los Angeles, and so you'd stay for like 3 or 4 films in a row, and each studio would end up paying your rent on your house, and you'd just stay in this house for like a year straight.
Cha-ching!
Yeah. And so Stacy called me one day, and she said, there's this director, Barry Sonnenfeld, and I knew who he was because I had just gone to the screening of Get Shorty, which is a great film if you've never seen it. And I said, yeah, of course. And she goes, well, he wants me to give you a script, but there's one condition. You have to promise that you'll never talk about acting or direction or anything with him. And, you know, because I had worked with Stanley Kubrick, he was a lot like that himself. It's always a kind of worry because you have nobody to go to. But, you know, I was used to it. So I said, okay, I promise I won't talk to him about acting. And so she delivered the script to me. She had the script delivered to me. And so I open it up and I start reading it, and it's this creature that comes down and takes over this guy's body, and there's practically no dialogue and no description of the character. Nothing that you see in the movie was in the script. It was all in Barry's mind. And so I kind of and I can't talk to the director. We were hanging. He was actually living with me at the time, and he said, it's Barry Sonnenfeld," and we had known about his cinematography and everything he had done with previous people like Raimi and Coen Brothers and stuff. And he goes, "You got to do it," and I'm like, "Oh man, what am I getting myself into?" I said, "Okay." So I said, "Okay," and then I had to figure it out, and so. I remember smoking a joint with my friend Steve back in the day.
As you do.
And,
it's prep work.
Yeah. And we were watching bug documentaries. And I remember sitting on this couch, which was a stoner couch, I have to admit. Back then, that's what we did. And if those days were only still around, it would be so much more fun. But those days are gone. So we would watch, and I remember we were watching documentary after documentary after documentary, and the last thing I remember is that there was a slow zoom in on a beetle walking across a wooden porch. and it kind of pushed in and then panned with the beetle in this kind of slow, and I just got up and I turned it off and I just said, fuck it, I can't do this, I can't do this. It's ridiculous. I wasn't learning anything. It didn't help at all. And so I went for a walk that same day, and I was walking on Santa Monica Boulevard, and I passed by a store that sold prosthetics and medical equipment for limbs and things like that. And I saw these braces, these knee braces. And I went in and I asked the guy, can I try one on? And he's like, absolutely. He was this old dude. He was probably about 70 years old. And he said, yeah, come on. And I explained what it was for, and he got so excited. The store was empty, and it was just him and I. And so we tried these things on, and he put them on my knees. And I said, is there any way we can lock them off? And he said, oh, yeah. So he went to his back room and he got some duct tape, and he had paint stirrers, wooden paint, right? And he brought a bunch of those out, and I bent my knees like that, and we locked them off with the paint stirrers and the tape. We locked my ankles off and my knees, and then I just tried to walk, and I thought, oh, this is getting somewhere now. Like there's a creature stuck in this guy's body. It must be very difficult for him to move, and he must be very frustrated about it. And that's how it led to that character, the movement, the way I came up with the movements of the character and stuff. And then I knew I had to find a voice, and we were watching Chinatown. I used to have a great big screen with laser. I still have like 2,000 laser discs. And
so laser discs are like compact. Wait a minute.
They're the size of an album.
Well, we got to tell them what albums are. These are kids nowadays.
Yeah.
So albums were these plastic vinyl things that you would put you just took a stick that would sharp thing would run around.
Yeah.
Music.
It was this big silver disc, like a giant CD, if you even know what a CD is.
That's that.
But so we were watching Chinatown, and there was this great director who was an actor in this film called John Huston, and I took his voice and started to play with what little dialogue there was in the script, and there was this one particular line, pond scum, and I did it like John Huston, pond scum, like that, because that's how John Huston talks. He accentuated everything he said. And his inflection was always the same, like that. And so that seemed to work to me. The only thing was that it was too slow a cadence for comedy. Because comedy has to be a bit faster, and you have to be able to control the beats in comedy, and you can't screw up the timing of anybody else. So to do a languid thing, it would have to be written that way, and this wasn't. So I used George C. Scott's performance in Dr. Strangelove, where he talked like this, very fast, like that. So I combined the two voices, and that's how I came up with the voice for the character in Men in Black. Yeah. And then that's not the end of the story, though. And so then I showed up on set, and I remember Barry didn't know what I was going to do. He'd never seen me do the character at all. And the first scene was the scene, I believe it was in a barn, where I cross through the barn and I kill an orchid man or something like that. And as I'm crossing, we're doing a take, and as I'm crossing, I hear Barry say, cut. And I'm like, oh, well, there was probably something technical wrong or something like that. No. He then told the first AD to clear the set and for me to stay. Because that's exactly what went through my mind.
Yep, somebody's in
exactly
trouble.
What that sound, yeah. Exactly that sound went through my mind. And all the blood, So I said, okay, all right, I'm getting fired. I've never been fired before, I'm getting fired. And he goes to me, first of all, Barry Sonnenfeld is such a sweet man. He goes, he talks like this. He goes, are you gonna do that the whole time? And I'm like, yeah, Barry, that's the extent of my talent. And he said, long story short, actually, he said, well, it's either going to be the most horrible thing ever, or it's going to be great. So let's just keep going.
It was absolutely great. It was fantastic. I loved it. So, no one else wants to hear from me. Even my wife is like, get to it. So, we're going to start off with your nemesis. A well-dressed, I want to say Matt Murdock, but you look like a very dreamy Charlie Cox.
Thank you.
What's your question?
Okay, my question is, how was it for you to go from playing Wilson Fisk on Netflix to then playing Wilson Fisk on a Disney Plus show?
It's a good question because, there's always this looming question about canon and what fits where and how does it fit. And, to tell you the truth, you guys probably know more than I know about canon. I just know what my sons fill me in on. But the only answer that I have for that is that I'm always playing the character the way that I want to play him. Like, nobody comes to me and says to me, you need to play him this way for that or this way for that. Like, they don't do that at Marvel. You create the character and they let you fly with it. And they love it. They love that you have the enthusiasm, that we, the actors, have the enthusiasm we have, which, by the way, our enthusiasm is fed by all of you. And so, well, it's, in this particular case, when it comes to these characters, there is no other greater enthusiasm than the fans. And we feel it, I have to tell you. And it doesn't scare us. It doesn't scare me. It makes me rise to the occasion. And so it's appreciated. But so I'm always playing him the way that I want to. And how that performance fits into each different show, that's not up to me. And, that I just feel like Wilson Fisk is an emotionally based character. He is a mess, a hot mess. And at his worst, he's a cold-blooded killer. And at his best, he's, I think, awesome.
Thank you. Next.
Hey, my question is just, you disappear in any role you're in. So what method, is there anything that really you found that works for you to really just meld and disappear in these roles, such as Edgar, Wilson Fisk, and things like that?
Well, I don't know if you guys are into actors talking about acting. It's kind of, can be boring sometimes.
Oh.
Without getting too actor-y, mushy, I'll just say that my training is in many types of acting. American Stanislavski, the theater I studied with, I toured with them for 3.5 years, and then after that I learned method acting. So I use a combination of a couple of different systems of acting, and that's my main go-to, those things. But basically, for me, which I think most actors do, especially the actors that are more grounded kind of people, my job is to service the story. So the better the script, the better I am, And so that's really it. I just approach it from the story, and I let the writers, without ever speaking to them, I let their writing just give me ideas. And I've just learned over the years through training and taking a lot of chances in my previous work to put a character together that hopefully everybody's going to like. I mean, really, to explain anything more would be an acting class.
Just a quick follow-up on that. I know some actors are inside out, and other actors are